welcome into another episode of Three True Values. I'm your host, James Fletcher, and we have a special treat for you here during the off season. Rivals has updated the Rivals 150, so we are going to talk to Jamie Shaw, our recruiting expert, about all the latest, the top players in the class, big movers up and down the board, everything that you need to know from the updated rankings in the 2026 class. Of course, we also talked a little bit about the 26 class in our Peach Jam episode just a few weeks ago. So if you missed that, go ahead and give that a listen too. Plenty of in-depth analysis that you're going to want to hear as you learn more about these prospects. We'll be back on the other side with Jamie Shaw right here on Three True Values. Welcome back here to Three True Values. We bring back Rivals Jamie Shaw because there's been an update in the recruiting rankings, and that means that we've got to break it all down. We've got to see who's at the top, who has moved up in the conversation, increase their standing as these guys enter their senior year, this 2026 class. Jamie, thanks for coming on, first of all, and just go ahead and take us through what have you seen from the last rankings to this rankings that has gone into the mix here.
Well, sure. In between the last rankings, we've had AAU, we've had circuit championships coming from all four major circuits, being Puma, Under Armour, Nike, Adidas. And we've had scholastic live periods. We've had elite camps, like the NBA Top 100 camp, Pango's camp, scholastic live periods, which is where the high schools come together, able to play in front of college coaches in June. And then you have two July live periods that happen as well. So there's been a lot of play, a lot of high level, high caliber play in different settings as well between the last update and this update.
Yeah, and I think that this is. I think most people, whether you're talking to NBA draft coverage or the recruiting coverage, this is the most important summer for these guys as they enter their senior year of high school, because obviously they're going to have to commit before in this time of year comes around next year. They'll be on college campuses by that point, and so now is one of your last chances to show up against the top talent every night. Some of these guys obviously at prep schools, but it's one of your biggest settings to go ahead and show what you have week after week, month after month, in front of the college coaches, in front of the scouts who are around and watching for the next level as well.
For sure. And this class has been an interesting one to track as well, because it kind of seems like it's a late developing class.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, guys at the top like Brandon McCoy, Tyron Stokes, Jordan Smith established themselves early. But there's been a whole bunch of guys kind of later within the process that have continued their growth to show things that continue to translate as you move level to level. So this has been a very interesting class to track from beginning until now. And we still have 3 or 4 more updates to go as we get into signing day in November, and then the high school season, and then obviously the All-Star games at the end of the cycle. But this has been a very interesting class, 2026, to track along the way.
For sure. And maybe the most interesting point among that is that Rivals only has 2 5-star players in the class right now. That's Tyron Stokes and Brandon McCoy, who we have talked about before, but I think it's worth talking about again. As I said, the only 2 5-stars in this class in the Rivals rankings. Of course, if you look at the composite rankings, there are more through that list, but in the update that we got from Rivals, 2 guys, Tyron Stokes and Brandon McCoy. How have they separated themselves, and why are they the only 2 that you're giving the 5-star nod to right now?
Well, because the objective with our rankings, we're not looking to look at who had the best high school career, who's going to be college All-Americans. The North Star, kind of what we evaluate our rankings on, is draft. So ultimately, there's 14 lottery picks within the thing, within the NBA draft. So what we are looking to do is we want our number 1 ranked player at the end of the cycle to go number 1, number 2 to go number 2, and so on all the way down. So a 5-star essentially equates lottery.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that you don't want to set unrealistic expectations early within the process. So you don't want to. What we're looking at doing is not giving out 5 stars, taking them away, and kind of being volatile in that manner, while also putting undue stress on the process of the player by looking at the 5-star ranking, then 4-star, then 5-star, and all that type of stuff. So with the 5-star equating has the potential to be a lottery pick, we're a little bit slower to hand those out throughout the process, eventually getting hopefully to 14 by the end of the process. But essentially, a 5-star in the Rivals ranking as to what we're doing in the Rivals 150 equates to a potential lottery pick, 5-star potential lottery pick. And right now, Tyron Stokes and Brandon McCoy have the look of players on draft night that could potentially be lottery picks.
Right. And I know that the whole 5-star phenomenon is something that kids care about. I mean, it is a big deal. You see all the time. I get notifications for a kid who committed, and they'll tell me 5-star player commits, and then you go look, and he's not inside the top 50 in any of the major recruiting rankings. But it's something that these kids they want associated with their name. But I like your explanation there on why you kind of play it slow. Don't
Mm-hmm.
put that undue pressure on these kids because to what I just mentioned, that kid who's not in the top 50 anywhere but is billing as a 5-star recruit, well, people are going to be underwhelmed if he's coming off the bench his freshman year of college, or if he doesn't get much playing time, ends up a 3 or 4 year player. Whereas if you set the standard at a lottery pick, you're going to, for the most part, see those guys translate one and done, if not 2 or 3 years. More and more, we're seeing that with NIL. But I think that that is a really good way to separate it and break down these 5 stars in a way that's fair to the kid and to the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's kind of also something to grade upon as well. When we're going through the process, we can look at it 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road and say, how did this class shape up and all that type of
Mm.
stuff as well. So just going through the entire process, the NBA draft is kind of the North Star. So what we're looking at.
For sure. We've talked about Stokes before. We've talked about Brandon McCoy a little bit. Was there anything that you saw that we haven't discussed previously that you think has separated them into this top tier of 5-star talent?
Just the projectability of what they have moving forward. As you scale from level to level, as you look at what Tyron Stokes has, is just physical dominance over his peers. Obviously, at the end of the day, he's going to go to college against these exact same players, and he's going to go to the NBA draft against these exact same players. And what he's been able to show so far is the skill, the athleticism, the frame, the processing, all of this type of stuff that scales from
Mm.
level to level as people get to be as big as he is, as strong as he is, as athletic as he is. He still is showing ways to dominate at times.
Yeah.
And with Brandon McCoy, what he's bringing on the defensive end of the floor, especially, he is one of the very best, if not best, perimeter defenders out there. 6'4", long arms. He's able to scale up or down a lineup throughout the course of a possession, whether it's guarding the ball, heating it up for 90 feet, or getting back, guarding off ball, getting in the passing lanes, being aggressive there. His aggressiveness and his instincts on the defensive end throughout Pete's Jam, he showed the ability to score the ball. He was touching the paint at will. He was knocking down jump shots. He was over 40% from three during Pete's Jam as well. And just really putting pressure on the defense, collapsing and making a play, getting his team into advantageous opportunities. He's going to have to continue to tighten things up and all that type of all that as well. But what he's been able to show scales level to level is to some very valuable stuff at the highest level of basketball.
Yeah, and we did again do a deeper dive on these top 2 guys as well as Jordan Smith in that top class in our Peach Jam review. So if you're listening and would like more information on those guys, I encourage you to go back and listen to that. But I want to get to a couple of guys that we didn't hit in that Peach Jam episode that we recorded, and I want to start with Dylan Mingo because he's a guy that me and you have talked about off air as well as on air, I believe, and this point guard class, how he stacks up at the top of the point guard group, because one of the main reasons, the size that he brings at that position in a class of undersized point guards, he has everything that NBA teams projecting forward have been looking for at that lead spot.
For sure. He's got, in the 6'4", 6'5" range plus wingspan. He's got the tools that you look for with the projectable frame as he continues to add weight to it. He's got everything you look for with the crafty handle, ability to touch the paint, the ability to put pressure on the defense, make a read as the defense collapses. He gets to the free throw line a ton with kind of a slippery type of game The low hanging fruit comparison, obviously, I don't like it as a 1-to-1, but the low hanging fruit people have said is Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, given the frame and kind of how he plays and all that type of stuff. Again, not 1-to-1. It's not necessarily one, but he's also super young.
Right.
October birthday, he's a year younger than some of these other guys in his rankings and everything as well. So there's just a ton of upside there. There's a ton of stuff that you already like, the production that's already there, the winning nature that he brings. And he's also a great perimeter defender. He just collects deflections throughout the course of a game, just getting in passing lanes and aggressively playing defense. It's just so many intangibles that he brings to the table, as well as the ability to put pressure on a defense, touching the paint, and making appropriate reads, left hand, right hand, off live dribble, hitting the open man, or finishing at the basket, getting to the free throw line.
Yeah, and he's one of these guys that when I look forward at NBA projections, I kind of have like a pretty high floor on where I think Dylan Mingo will go, just because there's a combination that comes into play. The availability of the position is going to make it so that any team that needs a point guard is going to want the one that best fits the NBA kind of model that they're looking for. He's got that. And then to what your point, very well rounded as well. He can do things in different areas on the floor. I want to go to a different type of player, Caleb Holt, and talk about his game. He's in the top 5 as well in the latest Rivals 150. I've gotten a lot of mixed conversation about him when I speak to people. Some people, it is through the roof. Some people are kind of holding back. So where do you stand on him right now?
Well, what Caleb Holt brings to the table is he's the ultimate connector. He has positional size in the 6'4", 6'5" range, a strong frame, and he can dribble, shoot, and pass. While he's not going to go and dominate the counting stats, he's going to produce stats across the board. He's going to be able to finish plays on offense. He moves the ball, gets off of it, relocates when it's not there. He defends multiple positions. He rebounds, get passing lanes, all that type of stuff. He's got a super well-rounded game. And no matter the level, the highest level that he plays on, he elevates the floor of the team that he's on. He's the leading scorer for Game Elite, who won the Adidas 3SSB championships this past summer. He's just the ultimate connecting piece. There's not really a hole that you can poke in his game to say that he's not good at it. Kind of just good at everything across the board, able to play multiple roles on the team.
Yeah, and he's a guy who I think it's going to be really fascinating to watch where he ends up and how they use him, because I think that'll have a big impact on his draft stock throughout his freshman season, at least, where you're going to see, yes, the well-roundedness, but does a team put the ball in his hands? Does a team make him the go-to guy when they need a bucket? Things like that, I think, will determine how much value he can carry from that wing spot, in addition to everything that you said that provides him that base.
For sure. And he's one of those guys too. Obviously, as you know, you get to the NBA, there's 15 featured guys, and everybody else is a role player.
Yes.
That brings positional size. How can you win in space and win in that manner? And Caleb Holt is one of those guys who's the ultimate complementary player to make a superstar look even better.
Right.
So I think scaling to the highest level, somebody who can dribble, shoot, pass, has positional size, defends, and elevates the floor of the superstar. I think there'll always be value there.
For sure. Now we move down to Anthony Thompson, who I admittedly need to do a little bit more research on. He's a guy that I just haven't come across his tape to this point very often. Tell me about his game. What does he bring from that wing spot?
So he's an interesting long-term guy. What he's always been noted as in the 6'6", 6'7" range, long arms, is a shooter. In high school season last year, 40% from the three. Throughout the 3SSB summer this year, 42% from three. Left-handed, all that. What he showed this summer, especially in July, was an ability to get downhill, touch the paint, and score. During the Palmetto championships, the championships of 3SSB, he went for 35 points 3 different times in that tournament during the playoffs, during their run, showing a more well-rounded game. And so instead of being a floor spacer spot shooter who's got upside, he actually took the reins and was scoring. He was showing aggression. He was showing an ability to get to the free throw line. He was showing an ability to put pressure on the defense, driving toward the rim in straight lines. So continuing to be well-rounded in that way, it expanded the upside that he brings. Now he's still thin, still going to need to continue adding weight which will help with his balance, movement, shooting, all that. But his ability to score in multiple ways outside of just shooting and spacing the floor was very intriguing in July,
Yeah,
heightening his ceiling even more than what it already was as the 6'7", 40+% shooter.
for sure. And you talk about that base is nothing to shake your head at, especially when we're talking about potential NBA upside. Guys who can space the floor, have size,
Mm-hmm.
knock down threes. That'll get you a job for a long time in the league nowadays.
For sure. And that's kind of where we've always been a little bit higher on him than averages because of that, because of the upside. But now he's actually starting to turn the potential into production, which is always intriguing to watch how that continues to grow.
Right. And you've got Deane listed as the top center in this class. And I know that center is such an interesting position in the modern game because it's all about what the team is looking for, whether you're at the college or the NBA level. Some teams love to have a big bruiser down there, a guy who's just going to collect all the rebounds and set big screens at the top of the key. Some guys, they want the big athletic rim runner getting downhill. Others want you to space the floor. So I feel like more than any other position, the center is really kind of what eye of the beholder type stuff. But what has separated him? He's in the top 10, the only center listed inside the top 10 right now. How has he separated his game?
Well, there's a few pieces to that conversation to be had when it comes to John. He is able to create advantages in his space. So he's one of those guys that you're able to dump the ball down to. He's able to create an advantage in a mismatch within his area. You also look at the positional value of the center position. You look at the transfer portal. You look at the recruiting process of these last couple of years. The center, especially in college basketball, has become one of the most coveted, if not the single most coveted position to have a talented center on your roster. Every bit of 6'7", huge frame, 265 plus. But his ability to create advantage with the ball in his hands, his ability to win in his space is unmatched in this class. There's also some positional scarcity as once you get past the first couple of centers, it kind of goes down talent-wise within the 2026 class as well. But he can score the basketball. There's going to be questions with him on the defensive end of the floor. But we've seen over these past couple of years, guys being able to, Zach Edey, Donovan Clingan, et cetera, guys who are able to win in their areas, project toward the highest levels and be able to figure it out as they continue to progress forward. Deane progresses a passer, one of those centers that if you keep him one-on-one, he's probably going to get a scoring advantage. And then if you bring the double team, he'll pass away from the double team to an open teammate. So he really took huge steps forward. He's always been a top 30 player over the past year or so for On3/Rivals. Now all of a sudden pushing him up into the top 10 because he was the most dominant center in the 2026 class this past summer. And when you look at the centers in the class, the value of the center, but also the scarcity in the class, that just added up to his to where he's at.
Yes. And perhaps the scarcity of the class kind of influences the answer to this next question. But I'm interested in how, when you're putting together these rankings, you weigh obviously we talked about NBA being the ultimate, the gold standard of what you're looking for. But in college basketball, you talked about the transfer portal and how centers have been the hot commodity there. And many of the top teams have gone for veteran centers, and even teams that have brought in 5-star centers in the past few years have oftentimes sat them on the bench behind a veteran guy. And whether they end up transferring out or they take over as a center further down the line in their career, I'm interested how it impacts your evaluation of young centers coming out of high school when you know that there's every opportunity that they're just going to get buried behind a guy who's going to come in as a fifth-year senior.
Well, certainly. So looking at the center position, when you look at the highest levels of basketball, it is the most unique. There just aren't that many human beings who have the positional size, the positional, the ability to slide and move, the ability to switch and hedge on a screen, the dexterity to be able to catch a lob pass and dunk it and provide vertical spacing or anything like that. Then you add different things into it, whether it be processing with the ball in your hand or shooting and all that. It's just such a unique position. However, it's also one of the least used. So the usage of the center position is also down.
Hmm.
So it just provides for a very unique player in the long term. So kind of when looking at the rankings, um, you look long term. And obviously with the centers, it takes a little bit of while. You got to grow into your body, your frame,
Right.
be comfortable as a human being, and getting into the comfort level of what it takes. So you kind of look long term. A lot of that has to do with uh, the fluidity a person has, like a Derek Lively. Um, you saw in high school, he just could do some unique things that many people couldn't. But you also saw that he needs to, really add strength and continue to get reps and
Right.
learn how to play within himself. Now all of a sudden you see what he's doing in the NBA. So kind of looking at that um, along the way kind of helps with the center position as to do they provide tools in the long term that
Hmm.
can get them on an NBA floor.
Yeah.
Then, after you get past that aspect of it, you look at do they provide the tools that can get them on a college floor? Can they win in their space? Are they able to create advantages in their space? You look at a guy like Arfangiane, he is currently right now able to win in his space. He is currently right now positionally has the positional size, strength, and ability to get on the floor right now, and then continue to grow from there. I mentioned two guys in the past that have been similar, but continued growth, Donovan McClain and Zach Edey and all that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where he differentiates himself higher. But then you look at a guy like Ethan Taylor, who's the
Yeah.
number two center in the class. His upside, at 7 foot
Yes.
one, his ability to move, his length, his touch, his hands, and stuff. Those are all things that grade well at the highest level. Now it's just a matter of getting the reps and the confidence together, getting the strength in place to best utilize those to reach the ceiling of what he possesses.
For sure. And as we move through here, I want to hit on two guys who are ranked in the teens, and they get a lot of attention. Guys that I hear a lot about, whether it's from fans or just the chatter around basketball. We'll start with Taj Ariza because pretty obvious why his name started to pop up, of course, with the family ties there. But how has he separated his game and turned himself into one of the top 20 players in this class?
Well, he's one of those ones that is upside. He's an
Mhm.
upside play. He's younger than a lot of people in his class, but obviously at 6'8", 6'9", he can dribble, shoot, pass, and move. There's a athletic fluidity in there that's super intriguing. But he can also knock down a spot shot. He can create advantages off the bounce. The next step for him, the strength, the confidence, but also consistency.
Yeah.
Hopefully, with strength and confidence will come consistency within his game. But that's going to be the next step is consistently going out there and putting forth what he can do. The upside of what he has, again, I use the word again, it's something I love in basketball is unique. There aren't that many 6'8", 6'9" guys who can dribble, shoot, and pass. He
Right.
is somebody that within a half court set, within a phone booth, is able to dribble, shoot, and pass toward an advantage. Now it's just a matter of consistently going out there and doing that, consistently being able to find the advantage when he has the ball in his hands of being able to do that.
Yeah. And Ariza, of course, another one of these guys that I'm not afraid to leave relatively high when I'm just kind of slotting people in and saying, okay, I'll come back to that and see, do I need to move them up or down? Because I really think there is something to, and we're seeing it more and more. These former NBA players, particularly the ones that kind of filled a role and understood the league and the business that went along with it. I think about being from Memphis, the things that Jackson Jr. said early in his career and how eye-opening it was that this guy just has a head start because of what his father went through in his NBA career. And obviously, Ariza has maybe perhaps one of the greatest examples of that. A guy who came in, was the ultimate role player in many NBA organizations, understands what the league is all about, understands what they're looking for, not just on the court, but off the court. So those are things that I'm not afraid until something proves otherwise to just slot a guy up there and then move them as needed from there.
For sure, and especially with Ariza's case, he just checks
Mhm.
so many boxes.
Yeah,
As you continue forward, it's just a matter of him putting it all together, him getting the
exactly.
confidence, continuing to put it all together, and becoming that type of player.
Yep. And Mika Murinen, the other
Mm-hmm.
one, I know so many people kind of were hoping or thinking that he might reclass. He ends up staying in the 26 group. What have you seen from him? Because he's a really intriguing one for me based on his size and kind of the potential of what he could become.
For sure, he's um, his mom. He comes again from a basketball background. His mom
Mhm.
played at North Carolina. His dad was a pro overseas. Big 6'9" guy who moves well, moves pretty uniquely. He's been somebody who's been in our top 10, top 20 for well over a year and a half now. Based on the upside and potential of what he brings. With him, he's got some skill. He's got the
Right.
ability to make a shot. He's got the ability to put the ball on the floor. He's a fluid athlete. He's got a little mean streak to him as well. But also being 6'9", 6'10", again, a lot of boxes are checked when it comes to the wing. If you look at the highest levels of basketball, the 6'8", 6'9" guy, there's a lot of margin of error for them. There's a lot of different
Yes.
pathways they can take. They can be a defensive stopper. They can be an offensive hub. They can be a connecting piece. They can be 3-and-D. There's a whole bunch of different pathways to take for fluid 6'8", 6'9" guys who have skill. Whereas other positions as you get further away, the 1 to 5, all that type of stuff,
Right.
less margin for error, which makes them more unique. Looking at a guy like Mika Murnanen, 6'9", 6'10", he's kind of going down that pathway of the fluid wing with skill. Now it's a matter to him as to which pathway he takes, what he goes down, what he wants to grow into. But there's just so much to like, so many boxes to check. Like we were saying with Ariza, obviously Mernan's a little bit older,
Mhm.
but there's a whole bunch of boxes to check there when it comes to physically and what he has skill wise. Now it's just a matter of consistently putting it together and identifying what you are.
Right.
Finding the identity as it is as to what you are as a player and going from there.
Right. And I think that one name, and you know that I kind of hesitate on comparisons, and I'm not going to throw out my comparison here, but I just want to talk about a comparison that I know gets out there, probably because of his last name. But Lauri Markkanen is a guy who people point to, and they say he's that fluid athlete on the wing, but he's also got size. Obviously, he's going to have a lot of growth to get into that kind of conversation. But when you talk about having a guy who's fluid, who has some skill, but also brings some size, it does intrigue you on the positional versatility and the things he can do at the next level.
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to Laurie Markin and Mika Murnan, obviously, do you have the last name and all that? This sounds there. I don't think their games are very much alike. I
No.
think Laurie shoots it much better
Yes.
and is a much more fluid athlete than Mika is. I think he's also taller than what Mika is. There's, but I get it. It makes
It
sense.
happens. It happens.
It's always good. The tough thing about comparisons is that nobody is 1-to-1.
Right.
So when you make a comparison, there's something that you see within the player that reminds you of that. Not
Yes.
100% of what the player is, but there is something within the realm of what that player has that reminds you of XYZ player. Nothing's
Yeah.
ever 1-to-1, and people just jump on the 1-to-1 aspect, kind of like I just did to you.
Yeah.
So here I am back, like the Homer Simpson meme, backtracking into the bushes. Comparisons, individual player comparisons are difficult to come across just because nobody's 1-to-1 and all that type of stuff. And
For
it's
sure.
all in the eye of the beholder of that.
Yeah, and that's why I shy away from them so often.
Mm-hmm.
I know in my mock drafts, a lot of people will do the comparison or whatever, and for me, the biggest reason is that you're setting a bar that's just it's either underwhelming for the reader or it's unrealistic for the player. I'm not gonna give you a comparison for the guy I have projected 20th in the draft and tell you that he's going to become Dwayne Wade or something like that. It's
For
just
sure.
it's just unfair to everyone involved to be throwing around. You want a big name so you can kind of compare to what you think of that player, but then at the same time, the chances that you reach certain ceilings and thresholds it's so low that it's almost not worth it to me to try to do that to everyone involved in the conversation.
For sure. It's difficult to, compare a rising high school senior to an NBA All Star.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. That's why you're seeing a whole bunch of shades of,
Hmm.
or a cross between, or in the archetype of.
Right.
There's now all of a sudden become prefaces in front of the comparison as well. But comparisons are difficult.
For sure. As we keep rolling here, I want to kind of go back into a little bit higher up in the rankings. A couple of guys that I was really interested seeing their names pop up where they did. Caleb Gaskins. I'll start with him. And what did he show you to rank him there in the top 10?
Again, it goes back to the long term upside of what Caleb Gaskins is.
Mhm.
I mean, he's a 6'8" connector. He's a 6'8" player who's a fluid athlete, has unbelievable length. He's young for his class, young for his grade, and he can dribble, shoot, and pass. There's not anything really sexy about Caleb Gaskins' game. You're not going to sit there and be like, oh man, this pops off the page and all that type of stuff at you. But he's going to methodically go through. knock down some mid-range jump shots, hit a corner three, and defend multiple positions on the floor.
Yeah.
And for that, he just checks so many boxes that they're looking for at the highest levels of basketball. Again, with a wide margin of error for which pathway he wants to go into. So just looking at the framework of what Caleb Gaskins brings, especially when you compare it toward the highest levels of what's in vogue right now at the highest levels of basketball. As a 16, 17-year-old, Caleb Gaskins checks a lot of those boxes as he continues to progress within his game.
Right. And Cam Williams, they're in the top 10 as well. He's one that's really intriguing for me because I'll admit, I love these guys who get positioned as a forward, and then you look and they're 6'11". That gets me real intrigued because it tells me there's some positional versatility there. Maybe at the next level he ends up a center. Maybe even in college he plays some center out of necessity, if anything, and it unlocks something. So is there that kind of upside in his game to play multiple positions as one of the biggest guys that we have ranked as a forward?
Sure. So that's kind of the intrigue with him right now. He's, again, somebody that we've had the top 30 or so, 35 for a good while now.
Mhm.
It's kind of coming together for him out of Arizona, St. Mary's High School. He had a good run this year in the high school ranks. He's somebody who's in 6'9", 6'10" range that can knock down a shot, and that's kind of the intrigue that comes along with him is his fluidity and ability to knock down a shot. Now, he only shot 20% plus or so from three. He was a sub 30 guy from three on the EYBL this summer. So, there's a difference between shooting the shots and making the shots as well. But that will come. The form of it, the fluidity of it, the balance points, the footwork in it, it all looks there to be able to project as you move forward at this point in the process. There's a fluidity there with him on the defensive end as well. Weak side shot blocker, able to protect the rim. Also slide his feet. He can open his hips and switch down and slide. Which is super intriguing as well. With him, it's got a little bit further to go.
Yeah.
Want to see him rebound it better. Want to see him do stuff around the basket better than that. Also, if you're going to play away from the basket, want to see him be able to create advantages away from the basket for himself as opposed to just being a kick out type of guy. But there's so many unique aspects to his game
Right.
when it comes to the fluidity and when it comes to the promise. I don't want to say promise because that means it's definitely going to happen, but the potential of the shooting at his size, in a class that is, as I said at the very beginning, this class is a late blooming class.
Yes.
So as a class that has very few established dudes, the long-term potential of a guy like a Cam Williams is very intriguing to kind of look at and see, as we piece things together.
For sure. And one of the things that kind of just to go back to my original point on why I love those guys listed at power forward, but have big height measurements. It's what we see once they get into the NBA. A lot of them fill out, and suddenly there's a lot to unlock in that game that just wasn't there when they were a little bit thinner, when they were still figuring out how to use their body. But when you have that skill to be classified as a forward and you combine it with the continued growth, that potential upside, it can get real interesting for their future. Want to touch kind of on the opposite end, some of the smaller guards who are near the top. Tell me about Darren Rippey and Tay Kinney and where you have them ranked right now.
Yeah, so both of those guys had very good moments this summer, especially Darren Rippey coming off a back-to-back state championship run this high school season at Blair Academy, Gatorade State Player of the Year in New Jersey, goes into AAU, has a really good AAU season with the New Heights program, goes to Adidas Euro Camp, wins awards over there, comes back to NBPA camp, wins awards there. He's a finalist for the U19 team, USA basketball. And I think he was the high school MVP of the Spider Camp and the high school one-on-one champion. So just he continued to check boxes off. When you look at his game, he's kind of unique. When you watch him on the floor, he looks smaller than he is when you stand beside him. I'm 6'1", standing beside me. He's at least my height, if not possibly a little bit taller. So, watching him on the floor, he's a supreme athlete, possibly the most bursty point guard in the class when it comes to both twitch and athletic explosion. Mm-hmm. But what makes it kind of unique, having that burst, having that real twitch, is that he plays with unbelievable pace. So it's not all one speed. He's able to manipulate a ball screen. He's able to get a
Right.
defender on his hip, keep him on his hip, make a read at the in the paint. But he's also able to dunk on a late rotating big
Yeah,
as he gets down there. The jump shots coming around are becoming more of a threat. Obviously, that opens up more of his game as well.
for
But
sure.
there's just an offensive burst that he has that is unparalleled within this class at the top end of that. And then the accolades he's continued to stack up.
Yes,
He goes to everything. He wants every bit of smoke that's available, and he continues to perform at among the top of every group that he has there. He done more than enough to get himself into the top 10.
for sure.
Looking at how he projects moving forward, it'll be interesting because again, that 6'1", 6'2" range, what that looks like at the highest level, he's going to have to get the jump shot down to be more
Yep.
consistent. Which he's incrementally taking steps there, but the athleticism is there as well. Looking
Yep.
at a Tay Kenny, he did the exact same thing. I don't want to make it like Deron Rippey was the only one. Tay Kenny wanted every bit of smoke that was available this summer at the Euro Camp, MBPA camp. He went to the same U19 trials for basketball, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He continued to go out there. He had an unbelievable NBA top 100 camp. What's interesting about Tay Kenny is he's so crafty off the bounce.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the one that's able to, within a phone booth, to create space off the bounce. He's got an array of counter dribbles. So while he might not have that initial twitchy burst that a Deron Rippey has, he'll set you up with a dribble, get you, and then get you on his hip off of the counter dribble that he has. And he's got an array of them as it happens. Whatever the defensive gives him, he takes the opposite dribble. He's unique like that within the flow. He's another guy that's a theoretical shooter. You like kind of what it looks like. Got to make more of them more consistently, though. But when his shot is falling, he is somebody that is a real threat of being able to create an offensive advantage and getting a defense on its heels with the ball in his hand.
Right. Thank you, Jamie, for going through so many of these top guys for us. I know that fans are just hungry for more information on these recruits. As they see the rankings change, they want to know why. And I hope that we've done a job here of letting them know kind of what different guys have shown, what they bring to the table, and why your school should be recruiting them over the next few months as we approach signing day. We are deep in the off season, but we have more content coming up for you. We're going to talk again with Jamie here soon about the players he's higher on in this class than the consensus. So that'll be a really fun conversation to have. Jamie, thanks once again for coming on and joining us. Always enjoy talking hoops with you.
James, this is great, man. Always enjoy the discussion. Thank you so much again. And, let's go. Next up's the 2028 introduction in September. So I'm deep into film of rising sophomores right now.
For sure, for sure. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
All right, man.
Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to this special episode of Three True Values. Hope you learned a lot about these recruits. If you have more questions for me or Jamie, please don't hesitate. Reach out to us on social media, tag us in posts. We love interacting and talking basketball whenever we get the chance. So stay locked in right here and to our work on social media and, of course, on Three and Rivals. Over the next few months, we will continue to churn out more and more on these upcoming recruiting classes, on the developing recruitment of the players to whatever colleges they choose. We will also get into more and more actual basketball as we get closer to the season. Of course, we will next week have for you another special episode. We'll talk about the players in this class that Jamie is higher on than the consensus. So don't want to miss that one.